Hello everyone, today we will look into the last main heading of this chapter, that is forms of organizing public sector enterprises. In our previous session we have seen private sector enterprises, but today we will be discussing about public sector enterprises. Now public sector enterprises are divided into three types, that is departmental undertaking, statutory or public corporations, and last is government companies. Now first let us see what is departmental undertaking. It works as a ministry or a department of the government. The budget of these departmental organizations is presented to the parliament just like other ministries. Indian Railways and Post and Telegraph departments are its example. Now, departmental undertaking is nothing but it will be a department created by the government, or it can be treated as a ministry of the government as well. And all the budget means the budget of this departmental organization means how much amount of money they have spent and how much the amount of money they were allotted at the starting of a particular period. Well, all those things will be presented in the parliament. Now, departmental organizations are merely owned and controlled by the government. Means government, they own and they control the departmental organization. Government, they used to do that. Okay, now let us see special features of government departmental undertaking. Now first one is department of the government. The departmental organization works as a department of the government. They have to work under their departmental head. Means the government will form a separate department and they will be assigned with each departmental head, and the department will have to work under the guidance of head. Then next is government treasury. Funds are arranged for their operation from government treasury. Now the funds which they use for working the department is allotted by the government. They used to take money from the government. Their budget is presented before the parliament, which passes it. Means at the end of a particular period, the budget will be presented in the parliament, and based on that the government will again approve some amount of money for next accounting period. Then staff from civil service. Their staff is taken from civil services. Their employees are selected through UPSC, Union Public Service Commission, and Staff Selection Board. They will conduct exam. They will interview people for taking staff in these departments. Now example is Railway Service Commission. They used to conduct exams and they will finalize the staff of railway department. Then next is full government control. Means these departmental undertakings, they are fully controlled by the government. They are also owned by the government. Then meeting government needs. These industries produce mostly goods and services for government or public consumption. Means this kind of undertaking or enterprises, they used to produce goods which are not produced by normal private sector businesses. They used to produce goods for government and they provide services specially to government or sometimes for public as well. Now let us see some advantages of departmental undertakings. Now if you want to see some examples of departmental undertakings in India, the most famous that we know are All India Radio, Doordarshan. They are controlled and managed by government, and they do not carry on their operations for profit motive. Rather, they used to provide service to the general public. Then let us see advantages of departmental undertaking. First is service motive. Now for departmental undertaking, their main object is to provide service, not to earn profit. The next is national importance. Activities which have got national importance are performed by this departmental organization. Means the activities which are very much needed by the nation are done by this departmental undertaking. Then secrecy. Maintaining secrecy is very easy in this organization because it is directly controlled by the government. Then proper management. These enterprises are managed by the qualified government staff. As we all know that for getting a government job in this kind of governmental undertakings, a very hard or there is a very lengthy process that we have to go through to get this government job. So the government, what they ensure is that through exams and various interviews, they used to take qualified staff for their undertakings. Their working is systematic, means they have a proper system of doing work, they are properly managed and supervised. Now there are some disadvantages of departmental undertaking as well. Let us see that. Least profit earning venture. As we all know that these undertakings they do for service motive and not with profit motive, so profit earning capacity is very low for this kind of undertakings. Departmental organization is owned and controlled by the government. It is formed with service motive, so it does not serve as excellent profit earning venture. Then red tapeism. Red tapeism is a system in which means red tapeism means that employees they do not think about the work or their or nation. What they think about is their own motive, means whether they will get salary or not, their status and respect, they will think about that only. Employees follow the beaten track. They do not take much interest in the work. They are careless and bother much for their bother much for their salaries, means they don't they don't think about their work. All they think is about their salary, because they know that at the end of the month they will be getting definitely their salaries. Then next is lack of competent workers. Sorry. Lack of competent workers. Government employees are not much efficient in business affairs. They have sufficient administrative experience but not experience enough to manage the activities of the enterprise. Means sometimes what they do is that workers they are not efficient or they are not qualified for the post they have got. And in departmental undertakings, promotion is given according to the seniority and not according to the qualification of employees. Even though a person who doesn't have required qualification for a particular post, but if he is senior than others, then he will be easily promoted rather than looking at his qualification or his abilities. Then there are political evils as well. Every important decision in the departmental organization has political motive, means the departmental heads or some of the MLAs they will think about their own party's interest rather than thinking about the organization. It is managed and controlled by the minister, who is a representative of a political party. The minister has to look after the interest of his party, so he will put his party's interest in superior than the nation's interest. Then lack of competition. Generally departmental organization have the status of monopoly. Monopoly means the type of organization monopoly means only one seller will be there or producer will be there. So departmental undertakings, what they do is that they don't have competition in their field of business, so they don't take much importance when in improving their services or improving their products, because when competition is there, people they used to modify or they want to produce good quality of commodities. But in case of departmental undertaking, since there is monopoly, they don't have any competition. Now next is statutory public corporations. Now public corporations are formed by the special act of parliament or legislative assembly. Now forming this kind of corporation or enterprises, first they have to pass special act from the parliament or legislative assembly. Their existence is separate from the government. In departmental undertaking, we saw that it is a part of the government or it is set up by the government, but statutory or public corporation, they are separate from government. This is why these corporations are called autonomous bodies, means they are free from government. That is why they are known as autonomous bodies. Though these corporations are independent in financial matters, even then they remain under the control of government. Indirectly, they are little bit under control of government. In Manipur, I can give you one example of statutory public corporation is our Manipur University. It is formed under Manipur University Act. So you can say that it is a statutory corporation. Now according to Morrison, public corporation is a combination of public ownership, public accountability and business management for public end, means it is owned by public, it is made for public and it is handled by the public. Now when we see some features of this public or statutory public corporation, First, it is created by parliament or state legislature. Means it is formed by special act of the parliament. Until and unless a special act in parliament or state legislature is not passed, this kind of corporation cannot be established. Then next is separate entity. It is an autonomous body separate from government. These corporations have the right to sue the third party. Since it has different separate legal existence, it can sue third party as well as third party can sue it also. Then government control. In spite of the autonomous nature, they have to work under government control. Means government will not directly control it, but indirectly some control is there in the hands of government. Then appointment of employees. Public corporations are free to select their employees. They may have their own service rules and conditions. In departmental undertakings, we saw that they have UPSC and SSB. They used to appoint employees for those undertakings, but but under statutory public corporation, they themselves, the corporation or the enterprise themselves, they select and they interview the employees. Free from government budgeting. Budget rules are not applicable to them, just as applicable in ministry and government departments. In governmental undertaking, we saw that the budget or the finances they used to take from the government, but in case of statutory public corporations, budgets are not applicable to them. Means when they are not funded by the government, and their budget is also not presented in the parliament. Then sixth is managed by board of directors. These corporations are managed by board of directors, just as public companies. In public companies, shareholders, they used to appoint board of directors, and in similar manner in statutory public corporation as well, the corporation is managed by board of directors. Now let us see some advantages of statutory corporations. First one is free from government control. These are autonomous bodies which are not under the direct control. Remember that it is not directly controlled by the government. Then service motive. In this statutory public corporation also, they work for service motive rather than for profit motive. Then independent decision. They can take independent decisions without even taking permission from government. Then efficient management. These corporations are benefited by efficient management because they used to hire board of directors for managing their corporation. So it is in the hands of professionals, those who have abilities as well as experience as well. Then fifth is economic self-independence. Public corporations are financially independent. They have to arrange their own finances. Means they don't have to rely on government for funds. They can arrange by themselves. Now there are some disadvantages as well, same as red tapeism. As we saw in departmental undertakings, there was red tapeism. In statutory corporation also red tapeism is there. Then difficulty in the change of legislation. Means if they want to change any rules in their working, then it is a very lengthy process. It is very difficult because they have to get approval from the parliament or legislature. Until and unless they don't get approval from there, they cannot change their legislation. So it is very tough to change legislation in statutory corporation. Then inefficient management. Public corporations are indirectly managed by the government. Now I already told you, these corporations, they are not directly managed by government, but somehow indirectly the government, they have influence on this statutory corporation. So even though there are board of directors to handle the management of corporation, but still they have to think about the government rules and regulations before doing that. Then next is danger of monopoly. Public corporation enjoy government protection. Their field of operation is public sector. This is why there is always danger of monopoly, because this corporation, they have government protection. Means entering into this kind of means business is restricted by government. Not restricted means usually the private enterprises, they don't like to enter in this kind of business or enterprises. So there is danger of creating monopoly. In spite of the above demerits of public corporation, they have been rendering valuable services to the nations. These corporations have been formed to rehabilitate and establish industries after independence. Industrial Finance Corporation, State Finance Corporation, Life Insure, LIC, State Bank of India, Indian Airlines. These are some example of statutory public corporation. Now, the third and last type of public sector enterprises is government companies. A government company is very easy. A company whose 51% of shares are held up by the government is known as government company. Now, these shares can be held by the central government or state government jointly or individually. Either this 51% can be subscribed by central government or state government, or both of them. They can subscribe to the company's share capital. Now, the reason behind the formation of government company in the presence of departmental organization and public corporation is simply to leave the door open for private, local and foreign participation in the capital. Now, the government, they have 51% of the capital, but the remaining 49% of capital is given for private people to subscribe, as well as for foreign participation. Foreigners, they can come and they can subscribe to the shares of this kind of companies. Now, examples of certain government companies in India are Heavy Electricals Hindustan, Steel Hindustan, Machine Tools Limited Hindustan, Aircraft Limited, Indian Telephone Industries Limited. Now, government, they used to maintain regional balance in the country through developing companies in those areas which are underdeveloped or very backward regions. Now, let us see the characteristics of government companies. Now, first is formation. The government company is registered as a private company under the Companies Act by the Ministry of the Department of the Government. Now, these companies are registered as private company. They have separate legal entity. Their source of capital is 51% by the government and the rest by others. Then management, it is managed by board of directors consisting of private individuals, just like public companies. Then autonomy, it enjoys enough freedom from government interference even the majority of its capital is supplied by the government. Then let us see some advantages of government company. First is independent business policies. The government companies are not under direct control of the government, so they are free to formulate their own independent policies suiting to their interests. They are also free from bureaucratic control and interference. Now, government, they don't take direct participation in the company. That is why board of directors, they are free to take, or they are free to develop any type of policies they want. Then benefit of expertise. Now, even the government company, what they do is that they hire board of directors and expert managers and technicians, so that they so that the company is managed and controlled by experts. Then additional financial resources. These companies have public as well as private sources. They can borrow funds. Even debentures can be issued by them. Means even though government subscribes to the capital of this kind of companies, but the remaining shares, the company, they can issue shares, they can issue debentures, or they can borrow funds from financial institutions. Then doubly benefited means double benefits. Private participation leads to efficient and economical management, and the government participation supplies sufficient resources. Means even though there are private participation, or the private individuals, they subscribe to the capital of the company, the government is there to provide any required resources they want. Dividend obtained by the government is used for social welfare. Now, the amount of share which the government has in this kind of company, and in return, no matter how much amount of dividend they get, what the government, they used to do is that they use that dividend for social welfare or for developing any other infrastructure of the country. So private investors as well as public are benefited through this kind of companies. Now, there are some demerits as well. Let us see. Undue government intervention. In practice, the government intervenes in their activities and it is reduced to a public enterprise having social welfare and service motive. Now, the government, they do not directly take interest in the working of the company, but still they have some influence over the working of the company. And next is government may interfere in the affairs of the government companies for the following reason. Now government, what they interfere in this is that investment choice. Wherever the company wants to invest, government will take interest in that. Then choice of technology, for purchasing any kind of technology also the government take part. Then location choice, pricing policy, personal motivation, all those things are interfered by the government. Then transfer of employees. Government employees are on deputation, means they will be posted in a particular place for a particular period of time, and after that they will be transferred to another place. Then no professional management. Government companies are generally managed by government administrations who are not competent professional managers. This is why these companies are not able to earn handsome profit. It's because they are working for service motive rather for profit motive. As well as the government managers, they are not that much competent, or they are not much experienced as compared to the managers of private companies, so there is no professional management. Now there are some examples of government companies. You can see that there are 5 names given. Now let us see the difference between departmental organization, public corporation and government companies. First is formation. It is formed as a department. It is departmental organization, they are formed as a department or ministry of government. Public corporation, they are formed specially by special act of the parliament or legislature. And government companies, they are formed by government department or ministry. Then capital. Departmental organization, they get capital from the government as a budget, in the form of budget. Then public corporation, capital is provided by government. And in government companies, only 51% of the share capital is held by the government. Then legal position, there is no separate existence, means they are not autonomous body, but public corporation and government companies, they have separate legal existence. Then management. The departmental organization are managed by government officials. Public corporation, they have separate board of directors, while government companies, they have separate board of directors, which can include private individuals as well. Now regarding staff, government employees are staff of departmental organization, but in public corporation, they can hire private employees as their staff. Then government companies also, they can recruit private employees for their staff. Then autonomy. Departmental organization, they are not autonomous, they are not free from government, they are not separate from government. But public corporation and government companies, when we talk about public corporation, they have full autonomy, but government companies, they have little amount of autonomy from the government. Now let us see what are the role or importance of public sector. Now first is growth of subsidiary industries. Subsidiary industries means related industry. Growth of subsidiary industry owes to the growth of public enterprises. The public enterprises provide more opportunities to the subsidiary industries. Over 500 cottage industries are selling their products to the public enterprises. Means it's because of these government companies or public sector companies, the other public enterprises, which we can say as subsidiary industries, they are flourishing because of the materials or the products provided by the public sector industries. Then next is employment opportunities. The employment opportunities are also generated by the public sector enterprises. Means if a public sector company is started, then there will be surely employment as well. Then capital formation. In India, the spread of public enterprises has stimulated capital formation. During the first 5-year plan, the share of public sector enterprises in gross capital formation stood at 86%. During second plan, it was 54%. During third plan, you don't have to remember all those things, but you have to remember that through public sector enterprises, there is formation of capital, because the government, which they earn dividend in their capital, they used to they used to subscribe to the shares of other public sector enterprises, and through this you can say that the capital is formed in the country. The next is basic industries. Public sector laid sound foundation for basic, risky and defense industries in India. Public sector also established the large-scale industries such as atomic energy, fertilizers, iron and steel, arms and ammunition, heavy machines, etc. Now, this type of industries, usually private enterprises, they don't start this kind of business, and because of this, public, government has taken initiative of starting public sector enterprises so that this kind of industries starts, or this kind of arms and ammunition, heavy machines are produced in the country and they don't have to import from some other countries. It helps in self-sustained growth of the country. Then next is resources of economic development. India is a less developed country. We can say India is a developing country, so it needs a lot of resources for economic development. But a small percentage of profit in private sector is reinvested. The rest is distributed as dividend among the shareholders. Now in private sector, what they do is that the amount of profit which is given to the shareholders, the amount which the private sector enterprises earn, what they do is that a small part, like hardly 1 or 2% of that, they will reinvest it somewhere, and the rest will be given to the shareholders as dividend. So in public sector enterprises, what they do is that the government do is that they used to reinvest all the dividends to some other beneficial or social development of the country. Then progress of infrastructure. The expenditure on the development of infrastructure is known as social overhead costs, which are generally very high and beyond the means of private sector. Now it is impossible for private sector to invest or to spend money on development of infrastructure of the country. The progress of infrastructure comprising of power, capital, goods, basic industries, transport, communication, etc. is a condition of growth. Now, since the private sector, they are not able to develop the infrastructure of the company, so the government, through earning of their public sector enterprises, what they do is that they try to develop the infrastructure of the country. The next is establishment of socialistic pattern of society. Indian industrial policy of 1956 aims at establishing the socialistic pattern of society. In such system, inequality of distribution is kept within the warranted limits, and public enterprises are expected to generate the much needed surplus for growth. Investment in public sector would serve as a check on the private sector. The government can sell essential goods to the poor. Now, in this point, you have to remember is that the government can sell essential goods, means basic goods, to the poor at reduced rates by adopting the policy of price discrimination, because these kind of work are not done by the private sector enterprises. Now public sector enterprises, what they do is that they try to provide essential goods to the poor at reduced rates. Public sector enterprises may set a trend for the socialistic pattern of the society, and thus wages of the low-paid employees can be raised to a reasonable standard. Now, through establishing a public sector enterprise, the government, they are providing employment to the underdeveloped region of the country. So they are trying to develop the economic condition of those poor individuals or poor families. Now, this next topic, changing role of public sector, it is not included in your syllabus. Means earlier it was there, but due to reduction in your syllabus, these are not part of your syllabus anymore. So we will be skipping these topics, but you can read for your own knowledge. So from next session, we will be starting chapter 4. For this session, we will wind up here. Thank you.